morning, everyone. Good morning. Y'all are so mellow today. Everyone just said. Good to see y'all here and good to have those of you watching online. As always, for our outdoor worship, we have lyrics and announcements, and you can check in via thegrove.today on your browser, on your phone. We also have physical, old school paper copies of lyrics. If you need those, they're over at the little round welcome table, and we have still our worship folders, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But let's first get started by singing together. You're invited to rise or stand as you're able, and let's sing Holy Water. Again, God, I'm begging, please again, I need you. Oh, I need you. Walking down these desert roads, water for my thirsty soul, I need you. Oh, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears, like holy water on my skin. Well, I keep walking into sin. I want to know about being born again. I need you. Oh, I need you. So take me to the riverside. Take me under baptize. I need you. Oh, God, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears, like holy water on my skin. Well, I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears. Yeah. It's like holy water on my skin. It's like holy water on my skin, like holy water. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. Amen. You can have a seat.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we've been out here for 6 weeks, something like that. I'm still not used to having the kids yelling at me from the front. So, kids in the back, good morning. Including very older, larger children. Thank you, Chad. Good morning. It is so good to be with you on this beautiful morning. Not too chilly, not too warm. We got a few sprinkles during rehearsals, but it was just a few sprinkles, and now it looks like they're all behind us or beyond us, which is fantastic. It's going to be a beautiful morning. My name's Jeremy. I'm the pastor here at the Grove, Cottage Grove, and we're a brand new church that exists to grow goodness. And so we hope that every interaction that you have with us, whether you're out here with us in the Grove or you're watching with us online or you're somehow interacting with us during the week, that somehow we're nurturing healing, wholeness, and beauty in your life. Logistics as we show up this morning. If you arrived a little bit late, I want to remind you that we have lyrics and check-in that you can pull up on your phone if you go to your browser and then just type in thegrove.today. That brings you to all of the lyrics throughout the morning. It also gives you an opportunity to check in to let us know that you're with us or to request any information that you're interested in, to submit prayer requests, those types of things. And then it has also our 3 announcements for today. And if you click on any of those images, you'll get brought to the information about each of those announcements. If you're old school and you prefer paper, that is an option as well. There's that little table over there. Robin is standing next to the table. Wave, Robin. Robin has these worship handouts and then also the printed lyrics. So if you would prefer to have the lyrics in hand or to have this in hand, that is an option too. Whether you're looking here or you're looking at this, this has some of the most important information that you're going to want to know about the church if you are new with us. Our values, we're serious about following Jesus, less serious about ourselves, how to give, information about kids as well. We do not have kids programming throughout the summer. We allow our kids to roam free. I would just encourage you, if you are a parent or grandparent or child keeper of some kind, to kind of keep an eye on your kids because this is an unstaffed area. We do also have the nursery inside the building that is unstaffed. However, we have the live stream going in there in case you don't want to miss out on what's going on out here. Restrooms are also in the building. Just outside of the building, we have a table here with iced coffee and some coffee-flavored drink of some sort, if you want to take part in that as well. If you do want to let us know that you are with us today, either for the first time or the 100th time, you can fill out that worship insert and drop it in the basket over there. Or you can do that online again at this website. Just click on the check-in button and you'll be able to fill that out. What other logistics? Also on the back of this and on the webpage, there are the 3 announcements. Again, you can go to that information if you want it. Otherwise, we'll hit that at the end. But enough about logistics, because we are not here to talk about logistics, right? We are here to connect with one another and connect with God. So at this point, we're going to move into our connection point part of the service, where you get to talk with one another. Who's feeling anxious about that today? Let's be honest. It's okay. In order to make it a little bit easier, we do think that it's an important thing, but in order to make it a little bit easier, we provide you with a discussion question so that the bar gets lowered just a tiny bit. So in just a moment, we'll have you stand up, find somebody next to you you don't know or don't know very well, introduce yourself, and then you're going to discuss this question. We're talking a bit today about hearing and responding to a call from God, which, let's be honest, is super weird. Can we be honest about that? And so the discussion question for today is, when you think of hearing a call from God, what do you think of? Do you think of like a booming voice from the sky for like the great and powerful Oz? Or do you think of like a small whisper somewhere behind you? Or do you think of someone talking to you and you hearing God in them? Or do you imagine yourself sitting in nature and then responding to something out there? When you think of the call of God, hearing the call of God, what do you think of? All right? So, once again, take a moment, stand up, find somebody near you don't know very well, introduce yourself, and then discuss that question. And we will reconvene in just a couple moments.
Y'all can find your way back when you're ready. This was a deep conversation. Okay, we're going to continue with singing so you can get your lyrics back out, either the paper or the digital. We'll start with Graves into Gardens. I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. A man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. And I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, nothing is There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. I was lost in utter darkness till you came and rescued me. I was bound by all my sin when your love came and set me free. Now my soul can sing a new song. Now my heart has found a home. Now your grace is always with me, and I'll never be alone. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy grace, Lord, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. And prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. And prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Can we pray? God, thank you for these reminders that you are always with us, even though we tend to stray from who we are, tend to stray from our communities, tend to leave the best parts of ourselves for the most self-destructive parts of ourselves. We see that we're not the only ones. We sing in these new songs and these old songs. And we'll read in scripture today how this is not a new thing. We have a tendency to run from our homes and from our problems, which just creates more problems, and it can be hard to come back from that. But thank you for your grace always, anytime we return to our communities and to the best of who we are, and to you, that you meet us there with kindness, and we can again find healing and growth in you. God, we love you. Thank you. And it's through Christ we pray. Amen.
So I just got to say before I get started, singing in public spaces is weird. It just is. And for some reason, it's a little bit easier when you're indoors because you can hear other people singing. But that's not always the case outside. Y'all, I could hear you singing. That's a big deal. Like, give yourselves a hand. Thank you. Not only is it good for you, but it like helps to create the experience for other people where they can join in it as well. Or even if they're not singing, that they can somehow enter into a worshipful environment. So thank you for showing up and for being willing to engage in that way. We are today starting a new worship series called Splash, with an exclamation point. Splash! And the subtitle of it is Exploring the Depths of God's Grace at the Bottom of the Sea. I got really close to changing the name after the Titanic submarine thing. I don't know that there's a whole lot of people wanting to explore at the bottom of the sea right now, but in any case, I kept it because it fits with the series and it fits with the story that we're going to be talking about for the next 5 weeks, and so I was not going against it. So, again, Splash, exploring the depths of God's grace at the bottom of the sea. Grace is a very churchy word. It's a very churchy word that gets thrown out a whole lot. So I want to start with just a really direct, simple definition of grace. When we think about God's grace, I want us to think about the unending, the undeserved, and the unimaginable, like unbelievable at points, love of God. The love that God has for us and that we are meant to extend through us as well. So when I think about grace, when we talk about grace, especially over the course of this series, I want you to think about that as the unending, the undeserved, and the unbelievable love of God. And in order to do that over the next 5 weeks, we're going to be looking at the story and the book of Jonah. My guess is, even if you don't come from a very church tradition, you are probably somewhat familiar with either the book of Jonah or the story of Jonah. It's one of those stories that is really well known, even if you didn't grow up in church or knowing the Bible very well at all. And in some ways, that makes it more complicating to talk about because there are different misperceptions and misunderstandings of this book and this story. And so we're going to do our best over the next 5 weeks to break it down really well and maybe take a different tack at it that might be able to show you things that you haven't seen before and help you to understand things as you maybe haven't understood them before. So we have the book that is called Jonah, and then the story that is in that book about the guy who's named Jonah. So we're going to start with talking about the book of Jonah. The book of Jonah is a 4-chapter-long book that appears in the Hebrew Scriptures, which is what we call the Old Testament in our Bibles, the first half of our Bible. And it appears in a section of the Old Testament called the Minor Prophets, which means that it's not as important as the major prophets. Ha ha ha. We need the full drum kit here. No, the minor prophets are called the minor prophets because they're much shorter. So there's the major prophets, which are like Jeremiah and Isaiah, which are really long. And then there are others that are the minor prophets, which are much shorter. And Jonah is one of those. Jonah is only 4 chapters long. The prophets as a whole were the stories and the writings of these people who were sent to God's people to deliver a message from God to God's people. And they, for the most part, they're different in time and specifics, but for the most part, they share some really big themes. And so when Jonah gets thrown in here, one of the things that if you read closely, you'll notice that it doesn't share a lot of the same themes as the other prophets, both the major ones and the minor ones. Many of the prophets, many of these books have lots of details about this is an event that happened at this time involving these people and this specific king. The book of Jonah does not have those types of details. It has some details, but they're very light on details. So that's number one. Number two is that usually these books have lots of God speaking. God is saying lots of things to these prophets, saying, you go and tell my people this thing. In the book of Jonah, God only speaks 4 times. And because of that, the form of the book is also different. Most of the prophets, the books of the prophets, are very poetic because they have a whole lot of God speaking. And the book of Jonah is not like that. Most of the book of Jonah is like a story that's being told. And so from the outset, because it has these very distinct differences, it's almost like we're being trained to read it differently. We are being trained to not think of this as literal history. We are being trained to think of this not as something that happened this one time, but as something that is happening constantly and that we can get wrapped up in as well. Okay, so that's the book of Jonah. But then there is the story of the man named Jonah that is in the book. So Jonah was a prophet. Again, I'll talk more about that in just a second. But Jonah was this man who was living in the kingdom of Israel in the 1700s BCE. This was a really difficult time to be living, especially if you were in Israel. They were undergoing all sorts of chaotic stuff. These foreign nations were coming in and wiping them out, removing them from their land. There was very little sense of collective identity. They didn't really know what was going on. They were searching for all sorts of answers about what was going on and how it was happening. And so during this time, there was this group of people called the prophets who tried to explain what was going on. There were different kinds of prophets, though. On the one hand, there were true prophets, you might think of them. These are the prophets that we read in the Bible. These were people who were being sent by God to share a message, and largely that message was, y'all need to get your act together or things are going to go poorly for you. And they don't get their act together, and things go poorly, and so then the prophets say, I told you so, now you need to change your ways. So those were the true prophets, but not everybody thought that was the answer to the question of what's going on and why is this happening. So on the other side of things, there were false prophets, which instead of public truth tellers, you might think of as like propagandists. These were people who said, you know what, we are God's people. God is on our side. Sure, things are not going well now, but things are going to go well. We just need to hang on tight, keep on doing what we're doing, because God's on our side. God is going to destroy our enemies. We need to hate our enemies. We need to do everything we can to fight against our enemies. Public truth tellers, true prophets, false prophets, propagandists. We're about to jump into the story of Jonah, and as I read this, what I want you to be thinking through is, what kind of prophet do you think Jonah is? Because that is going to guide our understanding of this book and this series as a whole. So we are going to read just 3 verses today from the book of Jonah. And this is coming from Jonah chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. Again, have that question in the back of your mind as we're reading this. God gave this message to Jonah, son of Amittai. Get up and go to the great city of Nineveh. Announce my judgment against it, because I have seen how wicked its people are. But Jonah got up and went in the opposite direction to get away from the Lord. He went down to the port of Joppa, where he found a ship leaving for Tarshish. He bought a ticket and went on board, hoping to escape the Lord by sailing to Tarshish. Again, the prophets, both like public truth tellers and these books, these were very familiar to the people who would have been hearing Jonah's story. And if you're familiar with it, you know how this goes. God speaks to this person, says, get up, go, and share this message. And what do? They get up, they go, and they share this message. In the first 2 verses of Jonah, though, we see that there's something different that happens. God says, get up, go, share this message. And Jonah gets up and does a shimmy, juke, and he goes the opposite direction. Immediately, the first two verses, we get an indication that this is not the same type of prophet that we are expected to be hearing from. This is not going to go the way that we are expecting it to go. And so then the question is, again, what kind of prophet is Jonah? Is he a public truth teller, or is he a propagandist? A true prophet or a false prophet? Anybody want to chime in? True prophet. He made it in the Bible, so he must be a good guy. Jonah's a false prophet. Jonah, this is where it gets a little bit awkward, because God shows up, as God does in all these other stories, says, get up and go and tell these people this message. The people that he was directed to go to were not the Israelites, were not God's people. He was supposed to go to Nineveh, who were the enemies. He was supposed to tell them, you need to change your ways or things are going to go bad for you. And if you do change your ways, then things will go well for you. Well, Jonah, as an official prophet who says God's on our side, not on their side, it's like, ain't no way I'm doing that. It does not matter whether the message, whether that call is coming directly from God or not. He cannot bring himself to the point where he's going to change what he does, what he believes, who he is, in order to get up and go in the right direction. Instead, he's going to get up and go the exact opposite way. Again, it does not matter whether that call is coming from God, God's self. He's not going to do it. He's not going to change the way that he thinks, the things that he believes, the person that he is, in order to do what God has called him to do. Jonah gets dunked on a lot. And over the next 5 weeks, we're going to dunk on Jonah a lot, because Jonah deserves it in a lot of ways. And yet, one of the things that I also wonder as I read this story is whether we are a lot more like Jonah than we're willing to admit. It's also one of the reasons why I think that Jonah is told, the book of Jonah is told in the way that it is. It doesn't include all these specific people and all these specific details, because it's supposed to be a universal story, not something that happened this one time to this one person, but something that happens repeatedly. If we do not pay attention to it, we ourselves can get wrapped up in this story and can go down the exact same route that Jonah went. We can hear a call from God. We can hear this message of this thing that we are expected to do, or this people that we are expected to be, and we can say, ain't no way I'm willing to change, whether it's coming from God or not. I do want to acknowledge a couple things, though, as we talk about this. Number one is that, well, kind of collectively, I think that is a misunderstanding both of what the call of God is like and what our response to the call of God is expected to be. I'd be really interested to hear what some of you said about what you think what you think of the call of God when you think of it. When I was growing up, I thought of the call of God as being this big booming voice, and it was a voice that I was expected to be scared of, because if I did not listen to that call, it was going to mean really bad things for me. I would encourage you maybe not to think of the call of God like that. Maybe that's not the most helpful way to think of God calling. I would also say that the response to God's call, again, when I was growing up, I had this imprinted in me that if God called me to do something, if I did not, I was in threat of really deep punishment, perhaps eternal punishment. So the call of God was like a threat. Again, I don't think that is the most helpful way of thinking about the call of God and our expected response. I think that we can go about this in a better, more faithful, more energizing way, even. Within our tradition, so the Grove is a United Methodist church. That might not mean anything to you, but there are some distinctives within our tradition. And one of the things that we talk about in our tradition, when we talk about grace, again, the love of God, we talk about this thing called prevenient grace, which is this grace of God that goes out before us before we can even respond to God's grace. Before we can even respond to God's love is already out there in front of us at work. We can see it, and that gives us the opportunity to respond to it. And so if we think about God's call being something more like that than this threatening voice from on high, maybe the better picture is to think about God being out in front of us like on a trail. And God is looking back at us and calling to us and encouraging us to keep on moving. You're doing great, buddy. You're doing awesome. Now keep on moving. I know it's hard. Keep on moving forward, because just up here, there's even better stuff. Just keep on moving. You've got this. I find that to be a much better and much more helpful way of understanding the call of God in my life. Just thinking about my own experience, I would love for you to think about your own experiences too, of when you heard the call of God in some capacity. Maybe a booming voice on high, maybe in the voice of somebody else, maybe in the back of your mind, maybe as you were sitting out in nature. And thinking about maybe the ways in which you were like Jonah and not willing to listen to that call and what it meant for the things that you thought or believed or the ways that you acted. In my own life, one thing that I kept thinking of this past week, time when I was running from a call, was around LGBTQ inclusion in the church. I grew up in a very conservative Christian home, very conservative Christian church. I knew the Bible really well. I knew those 7 passages really well that were very clear about homosexuality, right? I knew those things. And yet, all these steps along the way, I was introduced to different people, different ways of understanding the world, understanding God, understanding people that were challenging me. It was like God was speaking through these individual people, through different ways of understanding the grace of God, the love of God in the Bible for all people, different ways of understanding reason and science. And when I look back on it now, I wasn't all that confused about where I needed to go. It was more about an unwillingness to do the hard thing in the space where I was at then. It was hearing God's call, saying, "Get up, go this way," and me saying, "It's too tricky or too difficult right now." Fortunately, God's grace was still out there. That beckoning voice was still saying, "Come on, you got this. There's something even more beautiful out in front of us." So I wonder what that thing or those things are for you. Maybe it's very similar for you. Maybe you have these tightly held beliefs or values that over time God has said, maybe you need to reconsider those things. And when you have been reconsidering them, you've said, I can't do that. It's too difficult. Maybe there is a person or a group of people that God has been calling you to love and to embrace, and maybe in those moments you have turned and run the other way because, again, too difficult, too awkward. I'd have to admit that I was wrong. Or maybe the calling is simply a thing like going to church, participating in church for the first time or for the first time in a long time. Maybe you feel that call, that movement within you that's beckoning you forward, and yet in the back of your mind, you're like, I know all the bad things that religion has done, and I just can't do it. I want to acknowledge those feelings and also say 3 things as we wrap up. Number 1, responding to the call of God, not running away, it's often really hard. It's often costly. There's often really good reasons why you wouldn't do it. Some of the reasons are actually really good. And number 2, the grace of God, that unending, undeserved, unbelievable love of God is still out there for you, even when you're unwilling to move or when you're running in the opposite direction. It is there. It is worth it. It is patient to say, keep on moving, buddy. You got this. Trust me, there's something even more beautiful out in front of us if you're just willing to move along with us. And number 3, this is hard, right? The grace and love of God is patient, and it is out there and available to us. And number 3, the best way to do this work is to do it alongside other people. The Grove is a community of people who are believers and skeptics, curious seekers, and questioning doubters, and yet we all gather here on a weekly basis to acknowledge that it's better for us to do this work together. And so as we continue to move into this work of listening for the call of God in our life and in our lives collectively, my hope and my prayer is that we can listen together, we can respond together, doing that hard work together in order to move into a more beautiful future together. So may that be so.
With our final song today, I want to mention something. You might see in the lyrics, the bridge. It's got these lyrics that say, I will be yours for all my life. Which, I don't know about y'all, but I think for some of us, that could be a little bit of an intimidating statement. There are some people here who have been followers of Jesus their entire lives. They wouldn't think twice about singing this. And then there are some of us who are maybe at a place who are like, I don't know, God. Saying that I'm going to commit to you for the rest of my life feels like a little too much. Because we don't even know what we believe day to day. And that's okay too. And there's so much of you represented here who represent different places in your sort of walk of faith. And all of that is good and all of that is okay. And if you find that you can't sing that phrase with your whole heart, can I just give you permission to be okay with that and not feel bad about that? And also maybe you can reframe it for yourself. Maybe it's not sort of this I'm going to follow Jesus perfectly for the rest of my days, but maybe it's I'm committed to the process. I am open to that divine calling, whatever that next step looks like. Maybe that's what it looks like for you. Either way, you're invited to join us in singing. And if you will, please rise or stand, and we'll sing Called Me Higher together. He's going to play loudly so you can hear him. I could just sit and wait for all your goodness, hope to feel your presence. I could just stay right where I am and hope to feel you, hope to feel something again. I could hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave home, never let these walls down, but you have called me higher. You have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher. You have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Where you lead me. You lead me, Lord. I could hold on. I can hold on. I can hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, oh, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave home. Never let these walls down, but you have called me higher. You have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me, Lord. I will be yours. I will be yours for all my life. I will be yours, oh, I will be yours for all my life, so let your mercy, oh, I will be yours, oh, I will be yours for all my life, so let your mercy light the path before me, 'cause you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me, Lord. Where you lead me, oh, you lead me, Lord.
Worship handout is, so. It's in my back pocket. Right where I put it. All right, well, we are going to wrap up with logistics this morning. If you look on the back, or if you look at this webpage, we have our 3 announcements for today. Number 1 is the property improvement campaign. Again, we are raising money to be able to invest in things that are outside of the scope of our general budget. The primary thing that we have been raising money towards is a new projector for in the worship center to be able to do all sorts of better technical stuff, but also to take care of it as an accessibility issue. We're really close, folks. We're really close. So if you're interested in learning more about that or donating to it, you can do it directly on that webpage just by clicking the link, or if you have this, you can scan the QR code. Number 2, Grove Group for Teens. Woohoo! We had the first meeting a couple weeks ago. The next meeting, I believe, is this next Sunday. I put in our partner email that it's 2 weeks from now. It is next Sunday. Again, that will happen immediately after worship. If you want to hear more about that information, or get more information about it, again, you can click on that link and sign up for that. And then the last thing, which is happening immediately after this, is our partner party. So immediately after this, we're going to do our normal hanging out with each other thing, clean up, and then we are going to be heading over to the Kachuk's house. Unmute. Okay, so our partner party, again, this is for anybody who considers the Grove, Cottage Grove, to be your church home. For us to be able to gather together around food, yes, and then also to talk about the exciting things that have happened in the last year, where we're at now, and start planning for what's ahead and what that is going to require of us. We say it's a partner party, but if you are not yet a partner, you are still invited, just knowing that it's going to have some, like family conversation like you would expect if you went to a family barbecue. Everybody is welcome to that. If you don't remember the address, but you want it, come up to us afterwards and we'll give you the address. Anything else they need to know? No. Show up. We'll have food there for you, and we'll have people there for you to be able to enjoy together. I believe that is it for the day. So as we go out from here, you're already standing. I'll have you extend your hands to receive the blessing. May the unending, undeserved, often unbelievable love of God beckon us to get up and to keep on moving, to respond to God's call of the important, difficult, ongoing work of growing goodness in and through ourselves. May that be so.